Hi and welcome to RCKicks. Now this is a bit of an impromptu video over something that's kind of unfolding right now, and that is the what's going on with Team Associated and the RC10 40th anniversary, also the just kind of announced RC10T, and also talking a bit about the B7 as well. And it's the massive lack of delivery of units. What exactly is going on? So I thought I would just sort of come on and just talk about what I kind of seen, what I'm guessing's going on, and the dynamic of what's actually happening. Now, I don't have any solid evidence. This is my opinion looking in, so take it with a pinch of salt, obviously, as some of this could be right and some of it could be wrong. But first of all, I think we need to talk about how the actual chain of the business works. So how it normally works is you have a manufacturer of a product, Team Associated we take right now. Now they make cars, so you have the business, and that can be located in any country. Or what I'll do as well is if you know about the whole distribution chain, I'll put a time here, skip over that, and then we'll just get into it. But I think it's best to try and explain it for people that don't have any idea how a distribution chain works. It'll give them a better idea of what's going on. Anyway, so you have a company based in California, anywhere, it could be London, wherever. Then they have a product to sell. Now they will have, or they'll do it themselves, manufacture the parts. Now they may outsource bits and pieces of that product to be made for them, or they might make it in-house. Always depends, usually it depends on the size of the company. The bigger the company gets, the more they want to do stuff in-house because it means it's more profitable. If you're outsourcing parts to another company, that company has to make money on that part they sell to you, so it drives up your costs or it lowers your bottom line. So assume, you know, an average like Team Associated probably does a reasonable chunk of it themselves, the design. It might be they just outlay some of the part manufacturing to local businesses, or they then go to China and get parts from China, or they can outsource the whole kit to be made and packaged and everything in a totally different country. That could play a part, not honestly sure on that front. Then that company has a product to sell. Now, if it's in that country, they can sell directly. You can put a website up and then you can just sell to that country, and that's pretty easy. What you can do after that is you can actually try and sell to RC stores around the country, and then obviously you sell to them at a lower price point so that they can sell to their customers and they make profit. That's kind of the most basic way of doing it. Then if you want to go out of the country, your company grows and you want to actually sell to other countries, like for instance England, there's a few things you can do. You can actually find yourself a UK distributor who will take that on. So basically what happens, you'd have a company in the UK will then do an agreement with you that they will buy kits from you to then sell to retail stores and stuff like that. That way you kind of get round the whole outlay of setting up a business in another country, or the accountancy, the employing the staff. That's all taken care of by a local distributor. Now in the UK, that would be like CML, for instance, or Hobbyco for Tamiya, and that's how it works. But obviously they have to make money because they're a business too. So you sell your product from California to a distributor in the UK for a set price per unit. They then talk to and communicate with all the RC stores in the UK and have agreements with, and then they ship out all those units to the stores, and then the stores finally sell it to you and me. So that's the kind of flow how it works. Sometimes a company will decide that they don't want to use distributors. They will actually put their own company in that country. But you can imagine it's quite expensive, and there's so many countries. For a company to do that, it can get very expensive. And then you've got employment laws of different countries, different financing, how you move money around. It gets very complicated, whereas you just sell your units to a distributor and then off they go. Get sent over to the distributors, and that's how it works. So that's the kind of flow how it works. So what normally happens, and what's happened in the past, if you're going to manufacture something, the first thing you need to know is, well, how many units am I going to sell? Because when you manufacture stuff, it's expensive. You imagine if you're funding 1,000 kits and each kit costs you £200, it gets expensive. So you need to make sure that what you produce is going to be bought up by the market that you know about. So how it works is you talk to your distributors around the world and say, we're bringing out this new product. Can you talk to your shops and your contacts that you sell to judge how many units they would be interested in buying? Then this goes on in the background. We never see it as customers. And that information is then funneled back to the manufacturer. This is a really popular one. Yeah, I think I can sell X amount of units. Then the distributor in that country will say, well, going by the number that I'm looking that I can sell, I want to place an order for 500, 1,000, 5,000, whatever the number is. So the manufacturer then goes, that sounds popular. Great. Okay, I feel a bit more confident that we should up our production number. And I was only going to produce 1,000 units, but now I'm going to produce 4,000 units because it looks like the distributors are going to take off our hands 3,000 units. So we want a little bit more to cover any, if it's more popular than expected, but we don't want to risk too much because we don't want to end up stuck with stock. So that's kind of how it works. Then you manufacture what you want. You make the announcements to the world that this kit's coming. The distributor you will talk to the distributor and say, right, we've decided we're going to build 5,000 units. You wanted 2,000 units. We will guarantee that we will give you the 2,000 units. You agree a price. They say, fantastic. They know that within a certain period, they're getting 2,000 of these. They then talk to the shops and say to the shops, how many would you want? You gave me a rough idea, but now I want you to set an actual figure. So one shop, a bigger shop, might say, I want 100. Another shop might say 200. Another shop may say, I only want 10. They will then agree to supply that number to that shop. Then the shop knows it's getting 50, 20, whatever. It then puts on its website saying pre-orders available, and then it will start taking pre-orders for that. And if they've got 100 units coming in and they've taken 50 pre-orders, they know that the minute they receive them, they can send 50 out the door and they've got 50 stock. Whatever, the number's kind of irrelevant. And that's how it works. And that works really well because that means that you hear as a customer that the manufacturer is bringing out this. You talk to your local RC shop, or you go online to your favorite RC company, see the pre-order come available, you pay your deposit or you pay your full amount, depending on how they want to do it. And it's great. You're getting it. And then in a certain period that you get an email from them saying, we've received it. You'll be getting it in 2 days. That's how it should work. What seems to have been happening, and I wouldn't just say it's team associated, we've seen this quite a bit, that a manufacturer, obviously this all goes in the background, talks to the distributor gets the numbers, goes back, and then the manufacturer says, yeah, we can supply you with that number. Then it happens just the same way. Then for some reason, and I have no idea why, I can guess, the distributor says, hey, when am I going to get my 4,000 units? And then the manufacturer says, well, we're going to send you 200 this month, and then we'll get back to you about the rest. Now, the distributor is then in a position of, well, I've already promised these to my customers, which are the RC stores. So then they phone the RC shops and say, yeah, you committed to buy 20 of them. I can only give you 3. Then the RC shop is like, well, I've taken pre-orders for the number that you guaranteed me. Now I've got customers that I've got to phone up, reissue deposits to, and upset them. So if you're one of those people, you're like, well, as soon as it was announced, I placed a pre-order and now I've been bumped off of this list. I thought I was in the top 5 and it looked like it was easy. Now I'm left out in the cold with nothing. It's got nothing to do with your RC shop. Now, there is a few little caveats to that, which I'll come on to later on. But then you get the ump with your RC shop going, come on, in good faith, I was buying this from you, I bought lots of kits from you, and now you've dropped me in it and I have no kit and I can't buy one from anywhere. But really, it didn't come from the RC shop. It wasn't their fault. They were told something and then they were let down. But then you could say, oh, it's the distributor. Well, yes, technically the distributor should have much better communication with the manufacturer. So you could say, yeah, they've kind of dropped the ball a little bit, as they should know exactly what's going on. It's not like it happens in a day. This should have been, informed to them straight away that this number wasn't going to be met or what's going on very early. It shouldn't be left to, oh, they're coming in 3 days, but then suddenly they're not here. Especially if things are shipped by boat, that takes weeks, because once you put something on a container ship, you've got a manifest, and the manifest should go to the distributor that receives it at the docks. There should be no guesswork involved. When you put 10,000 units in a container and load it on a ship, the other end should get 10,000 units. And believe it or not, that has also not happened a few times from what I've heard. From other manufacturers. So how they don't know what they're getting until they open the container, that baffles me from my business background. Anyway, so that's kind of the dynamic that's happening. Now, the thing I don't understand is what's going wrong with the communication. Now, I have been told that the communication coming out of Team Associated for this RC10 40th hasn't been that great. So distributors are scrambling to figure out, well, what's going on? I've got orders for X and I can only deliver 1/3 of my orders. So you can imagine there is money being left on the table, and businesses want to make money. RC shops need to make money. They're paying rent, they're paying staff, they've got insurances, and they need to sell units, and they've got customers who want to give them money for units and they can't. Then the distributor is getting it in the neck from all the RC stores because they're making the RC stores look bad. And that turns into a real mess. Now, in the defense of the manufacturers, it's not as easy as it sounds. Judging how many you should produce, you need to have very good communication with your distribution network to get a good idea of where you are. Now, if you're bringing out something super new that's very different, bit like Losi did with the motorbike, it's easier to understand that it was something very different. They didn't really know what's going on, so they didn't want to risk too much. So they set their units lower. Demand was massive, and then they couldn't deliver. That kind of makes sense. What happens and makes a lot less sense is, well, this is something that's much more obvious. Now, when Team Associated brought out the RC10cc, they were putting their toe back in the water of vintage re-releases. So the first one, I can totally understand that they wanted to be careful. They didn't get stuck with tons of kits that just didn't sell. And that's exactly what happened to them when they brought out the Riri RC10 and the World Car. That was because the vintage market hadn't matured into what it is today. So if anything, they were too early. So they got punished for it, which is why it took so long for Team Associated to get back into the game again after spending the last few years saying we're not doing that ever again. And you can understand they put all that time and money into a kit, doesn't sell, loses the money, used up all their resources, and it just was a total business flop. But things change, market changes. And if you know, after how long I've been doing this channel, the market has changed massively. So Team Associated, by being conservative, lost probably 2 years of doing these kind of things, which is millions of pounds of potential sales that were scrubbed. So there is that. I can honestly say that I think there is a disconnect between the sales director in America who understands what's going on with the vintage market. There seems to be a disconnect. They're not following the market as much, because it was very obvious that when you look at the vintage re-release market, it was booming. There was other companies coming on board. Tamiya were producing lots of vintage kits that were making great unit sales, and it was growing and growing and growing. But you can kind of understand, being they got burned once before, they're going to be a little bit more hesitant about entering the market again. But now you can see other companies of like Yokomo are like, yeah, we need to be back in this market. And now it's coming in, from that side of it. So when the RC10cc dropped, something a little bit different as well, and the tentative release of that, totally understandable, very logical. It did do very well, considering it was something a bit different and very odd. Now, obviously, it wasn't a complete home run, but it did do better than, I can assume it did better than they expected. And I think from the beginning, me guessing, is that they planned to do the 40th anniversary gold pan first, and then when they saw the attention to the CC prototypes they had for the trade show, they decided to pull the trigger and do those ones as well, which I think was a brilliant idea, as it didn't really cost them anything. Because obviously there is a cost implication when you're going to do something that you have to take into consideration versus the size of the market that you're going to work with. So that was a really good move. I think that was very clever, and it kind of got the ball rolling, got a bit of money in, very little actual effort from Team Associated themselves. But the main goal, I think, originally was to do the 40th. So they obviously did better than expected. So you would have thought when they come to do the 40th anniversary, it was going to be more popular than the CC, as there was some pushback on the CC, as you know, it's fragile and it's more of a shelf queen / gentle drive. It's not something you can just take to the track and blast around, so that's going to lose them unit sales. Whereas this is actually could be taken to the track and driven just like the original ones. So how come they've got it so wrong? The UK distributor has only been able to fulfill a quarter of their units. That's how out of sync it is, and that's how big the demand has been versus what's been sent to them. So obviously there is a massive issue here that we've now seen with this. So what's going on? Now, if Team Associated, they could have a few issues. Now, it could be that the actual manufacturing of the kits was interrupted somehow. If they've outsourced the whole kit production to somewhere in China or wherever, they could be let down by that company. If they're doing a lot of it in-house, but then one critical part has been delayed, that can cause this problem as well. But the way you deal with it is you would communicate with it. I think anybody and everyone realizes that as humans, mistakes are made, issues happen, logistic issues, whatever. But I think the key is communication is the key. And I think what happens is there's a breakdown in communication. Whereas if they made, Team Associated made a statement saying, we've had issues with suppliers thing, please bear with us. We're going to meet all our obligations. It's just going to take a little bit of time, but please wait, and then we have an estimation that we're going to get back on schedule by this time. So everyone knows the time period. This can all be mitigated. Whereas I think with lower communication, so it could possibly be that the having manufacturing issues. I don't know. But being that we have kind of seen a bit of a trend with the 40th, then there was this announcement about the RC10T coming. Now, I think that was definitely a mistake. It was dropped. Now, I don't think the mistake was miles too early. I don't think it was a case of, we shouldn't have known about this for like 3 months. But it's still early. So, of course, I think they had to scramble to then, respond. And they did the next day, put it back on the website, which kind of fits with how I would expect it if I was from the other side, that I would have had a meeting the next day because it was in America to discuss what we're going to do about it now that the cat's out of the bag. We have to kind of come back and address it. And then the question in the meeting that I would put across is, can we now announce it? Is it fine to, it's not 4 months before we even start with them, we're only a little bit out. Well, there's no damage done, just announce it. There's no set kind of criteria, if you will. So, and that kind of what happened. Obviously, I'm guessing, but that kind of fits with a business kind of flow that I would assume if I was on the other side and I was part of the sales management at Team Associated. And sure enough, the page came back up again. Now, another thing is the pages were pretty much finished. What that means is that the web designer, people that were working on it, had all the text. It was already written for them. All the images were done. All the boxes were photographed and all these kind of things. And there was other parts of it added. Now, this comes in from different areas of the business. Yes, you have a web designer will put it all together and manage the website, but the images will come from the marketing department. They'll have to be taken. They'll have to obviously have a photographer. The boxes have to be fully signed off. The designers have to design the boxes. It's more complicated than you think. So that was already done, which is why I'm kind of guessing that we weren't that far out anyway. It wasn't like the page went live and there was lots of missing bits of information and stuff like that, and it was very early. It did look pretty much fully finished, which means it's closer than you think, because obviously even the boxes have to be signed off for any mistakes, any issues, and it's not just the cover. There's all the sides that have to be done. All the information has to be proofread, signed off, and there's no silly mistakes or anything like that. So that's why I think it was definitely a mistake. Some people say it was deliberately done to just dram up things. I personally think no, I don't think so. There's a million better ways to drum up business, you know, drum up excitement for a product than just dumping the page and yanking it again. That's a bit clumsy. What would I have done? I would have personally taken a couple of the prototype cars, gone to my local track that's very close to where the headquarters are of Team Associated. I would have taken some small sort of grainy images of the cars, and I would have dropped them into some forums saying, hey, I was at this track and I saw such and such. And then that's how you do it much more gently into the market. You let the market stew a little bit. The word gets around, people chat, people love this kind of stuff. And then I would probably do something like I would take a photograph of a product that's released, and just out of frame of shot where you can just see a little bit would be the RC10T sitting on the shelf, slightly blurry in the background. Someone would pick up on it, comment about it. That's how it's much more gentle, and you build it up over time, not just drop a page and then yank it. So I personally think it was an accident. So that's kind of where we're at. But it gets a bit worse. Now I'm hearing that the RC10T is going to be very limited, way more than what we're seeing with the 40th. And the 40th is being very limited and people are really missing out. So they seem to have got even worse. Now the thing that makes me more worried about this is I can see the RC10T, which was being very popular. It was never reread. There is only the original ones back in the day, whereas obviously the RC10 Gold Pan did come out, and so did the Worlds. So there is those units in the market, and people have them. I've had them. I've got one here. So to bring out something that's never been reread before, and something so iconic as an RC10T, it's going to sell well. So why in the world would Team Associated bring out an even more limited run of them? Now, as a business, your job is to optimize income and profit and revenue. So to then make the same mistake as what they've done for the 40th, but they're going to make it even worse, it makes no business sense whatsoever. If customers have money to give you for a product, to massively limit that product makes no business sense. You are leaving millions of pounds on the table, and a business that doesn't happen. So if I put my global sales director hat on, it makes no sense. I don't understand that strategy at all. It's a terrible misjudgment. So, I mean, obviously, I'm only guessing there may be more to it than that. I don't understand. It may be the early release of the RC10T news has spooked them, so they're trying to rush to try and do everything. Instead of, personally, I would say, well, yes, you know about it, but it's not coming for a while. Give us time to build up our units, and then we're going to sell them at this. You know, there's nothing wrong with people knowing about a product that's coming for 3-4 months before you then roll it out. That's fine. You can do that. But just to then rush and go, well, we've only got, how many units have we actually produced so far? Well, we've only got 500, but we're going to drop it next month. And then we'll send out those 500 and then we'll scramble to produce 4,000 later on. It's just very messy. But then you can kind of argue the other side of it as well. We might as well get them out as soon as possible. That's revenue in while we're then commissioning more. So that gets the money in the banks sooner rather than later. But the collateral damage of that is you've upset all your distributors. You've made them look really bad. And you've really upset the RC hobby shops. So much so, there was one hobby shop in California posted saying, don't buy from us, buy direct, otherwise you'll be disappointed. Now, for a business to post saying customers of mine don't buy from me, buy direct because you're going to be disappointed because I don't know what I'm getting, is a terrible business model to see. It is really bad. I mean, it baffles me it got to that point, to have a business saying don't come to me, just go to them direct because I don't want to mess you around. And yeah, that is, wow, that's how bad it's really got. So if you are trying to get one, I would honestly say don't go nuts at your hobby shop. Even the main distributor for the country, they should be leaning on the manufacturer to sort this out. If anything, they should be very proactive, and they should be supporting their hobby shops with information, so that they should be telling the hobby shops as soon as they know what's going on, so that they can tell the customers. And that's their job, and that's what they get paid for, so they need to really be proactive on it. So I hope that was a bit interesting, just sort of like letting it flow. It's not going to have crazy editing on this one. Maybe I'll put up some flow of how it works. But I don't know. Comment below, let me know. Thanks so much. Please like and subscribe. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.